Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is don't let it define you. So let's start with a little bit of a story. There was a lady who came to me once, and she was a friend of a client, and she was looking for exercise and nutrition help. But the reason why she came was she had a condition called Hashimoto's disease. Ugh, hard to say that. And basically, she came to me with the mindset that this disease was in control of her life, and it was defining her life, and it was ruining her life, and she was a victim to this, and she had a defeated mindset to where she was coming to talk to me not necessarily for information that she could use to fight against it. It's almost like she wanted someone to tell her, yeah, you're screwed, so don't even bother trying. And one of the things when we met was she handed me this article, and it was an article actually written in almost the first person. It was written in the first person of the disease itself. And what it was basically 2 pages of the voice of the disease saying what it was going to do to ruin your life. And she thought it was something that she could show to people as like, look and see, like, this is why I am the way I am in regards to, this is not going to sound very kind, so you guys will have to just bear with me on this, is she was not controlling her sleep whatsoever. So she wouldn't go to bed till 1 or 2 in the morning. She'd get up at 5:30 every morning because she said that's when her dogs need to go to the bathroom. You're in charge of your dogs, okay? But she would get up at 5:30. She'd try to go back to bed by 6, but wouldn't always sleep well and had a hard time falling back asleep. So then she was supposed to get up at 7:30 for work, and then that would be her night's sleep. So she did that all the time. She ate horribly. Had no breakfast, ate like a crappy, meaningless lunch, then would overeat all night throughout the evening, and then she had no exercise. So she was not disciplined in what she could control. She was sleeping like crap, eating like crap, not exercising, so therefore she was feeling like crap. But yet, she was blaming this dumb disease as the reason for all this, which is absolute bullshit. So after I read the article, I was a total jerk in her mind and told her that, yeah, okay, I read it. I said, but let's look at what you can do that you're not doing. So I completely dismissed the paper, which made her very fired up and angry at me, because I should have told her, oh, wow, you have the hardest thing ever. You are so special. Like, you're never going to be able to live happy. It's okay for you to eat ice cream every night. It's okay for you to drink a bottle of wine. Oh, poor baby. No. Total horseshit. Total bullshit. That was ridiculous. That is not how you're going to live a successful life, feeling that way or wanting to be treated that way. So I dismissed the paper, and I said, look, we need to fix your sleep. So you can't be going to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning, sleeping for 3.5 hours, and then expect to feel good. No human being on the planet is going to feel good for sleeping 3.5 hours, disease or not. You also can't just be skipping breakfast, eating pretty much nothing during the day. She would eat a salad or something at work, so her coworkers would see that she didn't overeat. So she was overweight, and she didn't want her coworkers to see her eating a lot of food because that would make them judge her, and they would think that, oh, she was just a pig, and that's why she was overweight. So instead of eating in front of them, she would eat in silence at home at night. So she would still overeat, which is what she was trying to hide from everybody, but she didn't realize, and this is just the truth of it. Again, this is going to sound very mean to people, but you can't hide the fact you're 300 plus pounds. People are going to know you're eating something somewhere, okay? So no one gets 300 plus pounds eating salads. So whether you show it to them and they can see it or not in your physical actions of eating, doesn't matter. They can see it in the physical way you're built, okay? So she was eating poorly and overeating way at night, bunch of sugars, bunch of junk food, and she wasn't exercising. Disease or not, no one is going to feel good living life that way. You're going to feel horrible. So you'll have no energy, you're going to have huge mood swings, you're going to be very depressed, you're not going to want to do anything happy and positive in your life because you have no freaking energy and you'll have no interest in doing anything. So that disease did not determine the way she felt and the effects that she was having in her life. It was the things that she could have controlled if she wouldn't have let that disease define her as a victim. So she was blaming the disease for things that she fully could control that she just didn't want to. Okay? Now, there are often emotional issues underlyingly to where it's not like somebody just says, oh, I'm going to be fat, I want to be fat. Okay? They probably have, like, they're 99% of the time, are going to have some kind of emotional issue. And we've talked about this in the podcast in the past about eating issues and stuff, to where me as a nutritionist, I have to recognize that it's not always lack of education that people don't eat well. It's most often lack of discipline. People often understand what's good and bad. If they drink a 2 liter of soda every day, they're already going to know that that's probably not a good idea, but they lack the discipline to not do it. And often the reason why they lack the discipline is because they don't have the emotional support internally, and even the social support sometimes externally. So part of what I try to do, even though I'm not a behavioral psychologist or a psychologist of any kind, is trying to get people to understand the underlying reasons for why they're not following proper behaviors for nutrition and exercise. And we try to address those. Because it's that's either what happens with people, is they're either lack of education or lack of discipline. And there are categories, like I have people who come in to the gym and they freaking want to crush everything, but they've just been told the wrong stuff before. Okay, that does happen. But in the cases I'm talking about here, is with these diseases, is often the people understand, okay, 3 hours of sleep is not good every night. Eating no food and overeating all night, eating no food during the day and overeating at night is not good. They know that, but yet they lack the discipline to change it because they lack the emotional strength. And that can be due to a lot of reasons. So the thing that I wanted to get across to this lady was, yes, you have that disease. And that disease will have an effect on you. It's going to have some negative effects. It's going to limit some possibilities for you. But there is still so much within your control. You can still control your sleep. You can still control your nutrition. You can still control your physical activity. If you get those 3 things, it's amazing how much the rest of your life has improved. Not only physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. We feel way better for life when we have good sleep. We feel way better for life when we have good food. And we feel way better for life when we're physically active and we feel physically energized and capable to do what we need to do in life. So there she was, relying on that disease and thinking the disease was ruining her life whenever it wasn't. It was the things that she could have controlled that she wasn't. And she wasn't controlling them because she gave the control to that disease. She had a defeated mindset. So she let that disease define her life. That's not what we want to do. Okay? Now, an example of the opposite is actually on our social media pages, in conjunction to this podcast, I'll be showing a picture of one of my clients. Her name is Lori. Super freaking awesome, wonderful lady. And she has rheumatoid arthritis. And basically, before we met, it was causing her daily pains. She was feeling lethargic. Some days couldn't get out of bed. Some days couldn't get out of the house. Just kind of felt defeated, tired, couldn't really move. Every time she tried to move, everything hurt. Just nothing felt good. And she was living a pretty poor quality of life at that time, or at least a quality lower than what she wanted to accept. And that's a better way to say it. So she decided to take control. And she looked into things that she could do, and one of the things she thought, and she had found out and read about, was exercise. That exercise has potential to help. So when we started working together, I told her the best thing we could do for her arthritis is to get her muscles super duper freaking strong, so that way the joints could take on less stress and get less inflammation throughout the day when she would move around and do activities. And then the stronger she was, she would feel better about physically moving around. So chores around the house wouldn't wear her out so much. So we took care of her nutrition. So I think she lost like 20, 25 pounds right away once we started eating well. And she started training twice a week with me. And she was doing a third day at home, like with kind of light dumbbell activities. And overall, her flare-ups have significantly reduced. She feels way more energetic. She tells me all the time stories about how she can pick up cases of water now at the grocery store and put them in the cart whenever she used to have to get somebody to help her. She can carry boxes around the house. She can carry the cat food around the house. So she's way more physically capable. She's more active. She's living a healthier, happier life. And that is still with RA. So she still has rheumatoid arthritis in both scenarios. The before nutrition and exercise scenario and after the exercise and nutrition scenario. So before she took care of what she could control, she didn't feel good. But after, once she took control of what she could control, she felt better. Did she feel amazing? Not all the time. Did she cure her condition? Absolutely not. But she made it more tolerable. So she made a life worth living. Okay? And that's what I want to get across in this podcast, is that you might have a condition, but don't let it define you. Okay? Conditions do sometimes define a narrower window of what's possible in our life. Okay? So if all of a sudden you're blind, that is going to put a limitation on what you can do. Some limitations. But it's also going to be something that you can absolutely still control. So you can find ways around it. You can find things to do in spite of it. So this is not something I plan on sharing in the podcast, but I actually just watched a movie this weekend called Fighting with the Family. And it was about a woman's journey to be in the WWE, World Wrestling Federation. And it was a pretty cool movie, awesome movie actually. And in it, there was a side character of the movie, which is actually based on a true person. But it was a person who was blind that became a professional wrestler. That's pretty freaking cool. They can run around a ring, wrestle with people, even being totally blind. So that's something that if somebody said, could a blind person become a wrestler, you'd be like, probably not. How the hell would that happen? How would that work? Well, hey, somebody actually made it work. So somebody actually became a wrestler even though they were blind. So it's kind of cool that sometimes when you have these limitations imposed on you, sometimes it gives you even more incentive and fire in your belly to say, screw that, and fight back and become something different instead of it, okay, in spite of it. So there are sometimes people when they get diagnosed with something, that they let it define them and they let it defeat them. Then there are the people who respond and say, screw that, and they fight against it. And that's what I would encourage everyone listening to this podcast to do. So we might not all have cancer, we might not all have rheumatoid arthritis or some kind of crazy disease, but we all have self-doubts, we all have things about ourselves that we let hold us back. Okay, we believe it to be a limitation in our life, and we let it decide what we can or can't do. We all have that to some degree. Okay, I remember there was a young lady I used to train, a beautiful lady, but she thought that she had, I'm chuckling a little bit, but she thought she had a gap between her front two teeth. And she was always self-conscious of it and said that she, would sometimes be afraid to smile. I have no clue what she was talking about still to this day. I did not see any gap between her teeth. So it didn't look like Mr. Ed the horse or something like that. Like, she was a beautiful girl and looked totally fine. I would have never thought that was something ever in her life that she would have worried about. But it was something that she let herself worry about. And, it's a bummer. It's such a bummer that we let ourselves be held back from our true self by these limitations. And a little bit about my story is, I'm blind in my left eye, and most of my life that has made me look cross-eyed. Well, not look cross-eyed, I am cross-eyed from time to time. So if I'm looking at something in a distance, my head will shake sometimes because my one eye is trying to scan a lot of information. So it does it in chunks, in sections. So you'll actually see my head shake as it tries to scan section by section by section. So when I used to go out with friends, and we would, this is back in the day when there were movie rentals, like Blockbusters, I would never, ever, ever want to pick out the movie or even help. I would just kind of be goofing around in the corner or not be involved, because when I would try to scan across all the movies, my head would shake and I would feel self-conscious about it. So then I remember conversations with people, still to this day, is I'll be talking to somebody and you can see them looking from my left eye to my right eye to my left eye to my right eye, and they're trying to say, like, you can see in their mind, they're like, which eye is looking at me? And man, that sucks. It took forever to be able to laugh about that compared to being depressed by it. But it is what it is. So, and then I remember I grew up always being kind of told, and you kind of noticed that I had a higher pitched voice than other males my age. And I actually had this confirmed in a test, believe it or not. My undergraduate is in health and phys ed, and I had to take a speech and hearing test to become a teacher, to get a teaching certification, and I actually failed the test. So that's hilarious. But yeah, when I was younger, I had really bad ear infections, and I can't hear well out of my left ear. So when I did the hearing test, they wrote it as passed with conditions. So that means you're like that special kid in the corner of the room. Then I did the speech, and they found out that when I was born, I didn't have a separation between my nasal cavity and my throat, and I'd have a lot of surgery, so my throat's kind of twisted up and a little weird looking. And it left me with a higher pitched voice because I guess my vocal cords and stuff got stretched or pulled. I don't really know all the science of it. But I have a little bit of a higher pitched voice. And it actually was recorded and written in the test results that I have a higher pitched voice than a typical male. And they registered me as in between a male and a female. Ouch. So it's one thing to kind of feel like you're a little bit different, but then to have somebody write it on a paper and then say, yep, it's official, it's like, oh man, that sucks. So, and then when I was younger, I was fat and weak compared to my friends. So all my friends looked better than I did. They were stronger than I was. I had a higher pitched voice, cross-eyed. All that stuff added up to me not feeling very confident about myself. And I remember even going into college and trying to avoid meeting new people, which is ridiculous because college is all new people. So I had a hard time with that. I didn't want to look people in the eyes. I didn't want to shake their hands. I didn't want to be around a lot of people. And eventually I decided, screw that shit. Like, I don't want to live this way anymore. I didn't want to live unhappy. I didn't want to live hiding. I was unhappy in hiding, and I was tired of it. It wasn't helping me be better in life. It was hurting me to shy away from those things and to let those things control me. So I decided I can address the body fat and the physical weakness part. So, I started training hard and I started kicking my butt and getting myself in better shape. I'd already started doing that when I was at 15, but I kind of just reaffirmed it and kept working at it through college. And I figured I can fix that. But I can't fix my eye and I can't fix my voice. But I can change my attitude towards those things. I can either let those external things hide the internal me, the stuff that I think was good about myself, what I thought would be the stuff that I wish other people could see. So I remember growing up and wishing that people could see the inside me rather than the outside me. I didn't like being judged by this outside container that I didn't think was the true representation of myself. So I said, I'm done with that. I'm done with letting the external be my definition. And I'm going to let what's inside shine so brightly that that's all they're going to see. They're just going to see the internal me showing through this external container. And so that's what I did. So I started putting myself out there and trying more things. So, for example, I'm doing a podcast now where all you can hear is my voice. And I've actually been recording some of these podcasts to put on YouTube so you can actually see me. And those are big steps for me. Those are things that, throughout my life, I had to learn I was either going to hide because of these fears and concerns, and never let the true inner me grow and flourish and become his best. Or I could say, screw that shit, and I'm just going to become my best anyhow. And that's what I chose, and that's been a huge, huge improvement for me in my life. So people who are close to me will often remark and laugh about the fact that I don't seem to give a crap what anybody thinks, and that would be in regards to thinking of me. So, for example, people in the podcast have probably already seen I broke one of the veneers in my bottom teeth, so I have what looks like a missing tooth right now. And I still got to record these podcasts. I still got to train clients, so I look like a total goofball. But what's the alternative, So I'm going to get the tooth fixed, of course. But in the meantime, I can't just hide from the world. I still got to show up. I still got to do my stuff every day. I just got to do it now looking like a freaking hillbilly. So, but that's what you got to do. You got to roll with it. So you got to find ways to become your best within whatever limitations are on you and in spite of those limitations. So whatever is holding you back, do your best to educate yourself on it. So if you have a specific condition, maybe you got diagnosed with PCOS, maybe you have high blood pressure, and maybe you have anxiety, maybe you have depression. Like, learn as much as you can about that thing. The more knowledge you have, the better you're going to be able to work within it and fight against it. Okay? And find out what's still within your control. That's going to be the most important thing. So if you can control your sleep better, do so. If you can control your food better, do so. If you can physically exercise, do so. Those 3 things will make the biggest impact in your life. Okay? And they're often 3 things that are still within our control. So you want to take charge of that stuff. Take charge of what's left, quote unquote. So, and live the best life you can. Don't let any condition or any external limit, don't let that limit you. Don't let it define your happiness. Don't let it define your joy. Don't let it define your dreams. You are still in control of your happiness. You are still in control of your joy. You are still in control of your dreams. Okay? I remember there was a story I used to watch, ESPN 60 for 60. They have these series for different videos and stuff. And I remember watching one where there was this young guy, and he wanted to be a sports athlete. And he was really good in middle school into high school, but towards his senior year, he started experiencing some abnormalities. He couldn't move well. He started having pains in his joints. And they found out later on that he had a medical condition where his muscles would calcify and pretty much turn to bone. And therefore, he wasn't able to become an athlete. So he decided, okay, well, what's the next best thing? Maybe I can become a sports announcer. So he delved into that and tried to become the best sports announcer he could be. So it wasn't, it wasn't the athlete dream, but it was still something. He could still be around athletes. He could still, be in the athletic world. And I remember at the end of the video, they showed a conference room where there was some kind of speech going on about sports. And the young boy, he was probably like early 20s, mid-20s by then. And he was laying in the back of the room on a blanket. And he was talking through a voice box machine. And saying that that's where he's at in life. He couldn't move. He couldn't move himself. Everybody had to take care of him. He could only talk through a voice box, couldn't talk through himself. But he hadn't given up. He was still going to these seminars. He was still going to teachings. He was still involved, still trying to be the best he could be with what he had left. And I remember seeing that and just thinking to myself that, like, oh my God, like, whatever I'm complaining about, whatever I'm letting hold myself back, I'm a joke, I'm a ridiculous. Like, I can't let that be. I can't do that to myself whenever there's someone out there with his conditions and he was still pushing forward and trying to become his best. I mean, damn, that was an eye-opener for me to see somebody who was truly having life taken away from them day by day by day, but they were still fighting harder every single day. And I took that story and I used that to motivation still to this day. So anytime I feel poor me, I think about that kid and say, man, you are totally fine. There's nothing you should be worrying about. Get your ass moving. So that's what I try to do, is fight for the best life I can with what I have. And that's what I'd recommend you guys to do too. So whatever you think might be holding you back, don't let it. Educate yourself. Find out what you can still control and control the hell out of it. Do the best you can with it, okay? So you have to make a fight in your life. And through that fight, you're going to find a life worth living. And you're probably going to go a lot further than what you ever would have without that fight. So sometimes these things that come into our life that challenge us, they can shut you down if you let them, or they can actually build you up and help you become an even better version of yourself that you never would have without that condition or without that incident. So sometimes the things that challenge us, they're not meant to define us. They're meant to build us. They're meant to grow us. They're meant to help push us into the person we were overall meant to become. So, whatever you think your limitations are, whatever disease condition you have, it's true that it's there, most likely. So, you're going to have to accept that. However, you can still control an enormous amount about your life, and it's up to you to take on the responsibility to control that. So you can still live an amazing, amazing life. Way better than you possibly ever imagined. But you have to decide to do so. Okay? It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be handed to you. You have to work your ass off. And when you thought you'd work as hard as you could, you're going to have to work even harder. But it's possible. And if you put yourself through it, you're going to come out of this on a way better end. You're going to live a life you actually wanted to live. Maybe you never even dreamed of living. A life that was worth living. Okay? So educate yourself. Find out what you can control and control the hell out of it. Don't let your challenges define you. Let them build you. Cool. So hopefully this was helpful. So if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. Also, if you like the podcast, you can sign up to become a patron of the podcast by donating $10 or more a month. And for your donation, we'll send you online programming. So you can get programming for any goal: strength, aesthetics, overall health, fat loss, training at home with no equipment, whatever the heck it might be, we'll send you a program for it, okay? Every single month, and it's renewed every month, so you get new exercises, new workouts. Now, if you'd like to become a patron, you can do so directly in the Podbean app by sending us an email or do a Google search for Become a Patron Brutal Iron Gym Podcast. And if you like the podcast, make sure you share it with your family and friends, so the more people we help, the happier the world's going to be. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. This podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. And you can reach us at our email, brutalironGym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.